All right, so welcome everybody. Um, my name is Caitlin, and I work in prevention and screening clinical services at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center. And part of the mandate for our service is to promote health and chronic disease prevention. And one of the ways that we do this is by hosting our healthy get-togethers. So we've had quite a few in the past, and they can all be seen on the hospital's website. And tonight's topic of parenting is part of our mental health series. It will also be recorded and then added to that website for anyone who can't make it tonight or if you have to sign off early. Now, just before I introduce the speaker, I just wanted to remind everyone to turn their cameras off or keep their cameras off unless you have a question to ask, and make sure that your microphones are on mute. There will be the opportunity at the end to ask questions, or you can add your question to the chat comments that are located on the right-hand side of your screen, and then I can read them out loud to the group afterwards. Now, welcome to Kristine Lake. So Kristine is going to be our speaker tonight, and this is the second topic in our mental health series that she's joining us for. So she's been working as a psychologist in forensic mental health since February of 2019, and she has been practicing for more than 25 years in different settings like addictions, children's mental health, and adult mental health. And we're very thankful that she continues to join us for these talks. So with that, I'll pass it off to her.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, I'm happy to be doing these talks and was really looking forward to doing this one about parenting. I just want to start off by saying that if I am giving the impression throughout this presentation that parenting is easy, that is not my intention, because I know very well how difficult parenting is. It's also very rewarding, but it's maybe one of the most challenging things that I've done. As I was becoming a parent for the first time, I thought, hey, I'm a psychologist. I know all about people. I know about child development and behaviorism. This is going to be a piece of cake. I'm not going to make all those mistakes that, I know are so wrong to do. Very quickly, I realized that babies don't listen and interact so well, and maybe kids have a hard time with that for quite a bit of time. And I pretty quickly did all those things that I thought I wouldn't be doing. So this is not an easy task. But I have learned a lot of things along the way that have stood out to me as particularly helpful. So hopefully I can share some of those today, and you'll find them helpful as well. So I really like this quote. Who of us is mature enough for offspring before the offspring themselves arrive? The value of parenthood is not that adults produce children, but that children produce adults. So no truer a statement can I think of. We certainly grow up pretty quickly when we have a child. I also think of this in another way as well, that not only do our kids help us to grow up, but our primary goal of parenting is to produce well-functioning adults that can contribute in meaningful ways. That's really our job. See, again, I'm making it sound easy. It's not. The main way we do this is through attachment. That's a big role for us, the most important role for us as parents, I think, because really it's through that attachment that our children learn how to cope. And that happens because we become their coping system in the beginning, because of course they're not born with that, right? So we are a comforting mental presence in those difficult moments. We help them to learn about what they're feeling, what they need, by responding to them appropriately. And this happens in the first several years of life. That's when it's the most critical. And we form attachment styles based on our primary attachment figure. And we carry those with us throughout the lifespan, and they really inform all of our relationships. right into adulthood. So what this is if we as the parent are able to respond in a way that our baby needs and our young child needs, then they start to learn to trust that people will be there for them when they need it. They feel safer in the world, and this allows them to feel okay exploring the world. And you might, if you've had babies, young children, you notice how they start to feel more comfortable exploring. So they might go off and explore, and then they'll come back and check in and make sure you're still there, right? That's just they're learning to be okay with that. If a child doesn't have the responses that they need, they can stop trusting that somebody is going to be there for them and start to feel like the world is a little bit dangerous to them. They'll be a little bit more anxious. So we develop that sense of trust. We also learn how to regulate our emotions through this attachment system. So of course, babies are not born knowing how they feel, what they need, or how to ask for it. So we do that. You know, when our baby is crying, we respond. We might even start to name some of the things that we think they're feeling. Are you sad? Are you scared? Are you hungry? Whatever it might be, and provide what they need. So that's the attachment system. Now, again, there are a lot of things that can make this really difficult. Of course, we'd all like to be able to respond in a helpful way to our babies, but that can be really challenging. Again, something I figured out really quickly after the birth of my first baby, because one of the things that can really be a factor is temperament. So this is kind of our, it becomes kind of our personality style. So uh, you can see the temperament almost right at birth. You know, some babies are born really sensitive and reactive. Others might be really easygoing. In my case, I had a highly reactive baby. And what also factors into that is your own temperament. So I tend to be a bit on the reactive side as well, and that can be a bit of a disaster for trying to understand your child and respond effectively. So she was reacting strongly. It was difficult to find out what it was that she needed. And then I would start to react because I felt anxious or frustrated by what was happening. So that can happen even with the best of intentions and experience and knowledge. So you'd want to be gentle with yourself about that. The most important thing, though, is that you respond as a parent. So you might struggle in trying to figure out what's needed or what's going on. But as long as you're making that effort to soothe your child, to sort out what the problem is, that's really the most important part. As my daughter grew older, it started to become pretty evident what the problem was. She was one of those kids that ended up hating their socks and their underwear. Everything felt awful on her skin. So that was probably the case when she was a baby. The diaper probably felt horrible. And that's what she was crying about. But of course, she couldn't tell me, and I didn't know. Luckily, I kept responding, and she's now 24 and she's okay. So it worked out. So in the temperament, we look at the reactivity, how strongly they react to things. They tend to feel things very strongly, the highly reactive children. We also take a look at their self-regulation. So how well can they control their behavior, their emotions, their attention, and how persistent they are. And we look at their sociability. How comfortable are they when they meet new people, when they're around people in general? So that's what we look at for temperament. And there's a few different types. So as I mentioned earlier, there's sort of the easy or flexible children. Those are nice ones to have. So they tend to be happy, they sleep pretty regular, they eat okay, they're calm, they don't get too upset. Then there's the active or feisty children. They can be pretty fussy, irregular in their habits, fearful of people, pretty intense in their reactions, usually pretty sensitive also to any noise or stimulation. Then we have the slow to warm up or the cautious children. They're less active. They can be a little bit fussy, and they react pretty negatively to new situations. But they can overcome some of that stuff with some time. So in terms of how we approach parenting, there are a few different ways we can do it. These styles have been around for a while. So there's the authoritative approach. You can think of these parents as collaborators. So you're sort of working with your child. You're involving them in a lot of the decisions. You are the one in charge, though. So they might have great ideas, like they want to have ice cream for dinner every evening. You're okay to listen to that suggestion. And maybe occasionally you'll let them do that. I don't know. But ultimately, you get to make the decision. But even just the process of inviting them to share their opinion about decisions that affect them can be a really helpful thing to do. Sometimes they might convince you, which is kind of cool as well. There's the permissive style, which we sometimes call the jellyfish. So this is somebody who can gives in pretty easily to their child, and sometimes can feel like they're getting walked on all over. So that's the jellyfish. The uninvolved parent, where they're essentially fairly absent. And I don't mean this to be judgmental, because there sometimes are very good reasons for a parent having a lot of difficulty being present and involved. Health issues, maybe they have a job that takes them away for periods of time. Then there's the authoritarian, and we can sometimes describe them as drill sergeants. So very, very strict, firm, kind of my way or the highway sort of approach to parenting. Authoritative parenting has long been thought to be the most effective approach for parenting. So parents who use this approach, they're nurturing, they're responsive, they're supportive, but they're firm. They set their limits, right? The jellyfish parents might have difficulties setting those limits and boundaries. And the drill sergeant parents might have too firm of limits for their children. So again, the authoritative parents, they listen to the child's viewpoint. They don't always accept it. Children don't really typically have enough experience to be able to make these decisions for themselves. So we need to do that. And children who are raised in this style tend to be friendly and energetic, cheerful, confident, self-reliant, curious, cooperative. So I'm going to get into the sort of discipline style. And this is kind of a style that is associated with authoritative parenting. And this can be a challenge. Disciplining is a challenge. And I'm going to talk about it in terms of what's appropriate for the different stages of development. There are some really important ground rules for discipline. One is to stand firm. So be consistent. If you've set a rule, or if you've mentioned that there's going to be a consequence, definitely do what you can to stick to that. It's not always easy, and obviously we can't be perfect. So there are going to be times when we don't do that. We give in, and then later we think, oh, I shouldn't have given in. Again, be gentle with yourself. We're doing the best that we can. We kind of learn as we go along, I think. Picking your battles is a really good thing to think about. You know, sometimes we can get into really getting on every little thing that's happening. And what we want to do is give the small things small attention, give the big things big attention, right? There are some things, as much as they bother you, you could maybe let go and really kind of turn your attention to the issues that are really important or have real significant consequences. That can really help with the relationship. Praise, don't punish. Now, when I say punish, I'm talking about actual punishment. We do need consequences and discipline for sure. But what we do know in the field of psychology is that reinforcement is way more effective than punishment. So what we want to focus on is rewarding the behaviors that we want to see more of. That's really important. And then having effective consequences for the behaviors that we want to see less. And we want to do consequences that are logical, so they sort of fit the crime, I guess, or natural, right? If you're going to throw your toys around and you break one, well, now you no longer have that toy, right? That's a natural consequence. We want to be clear about the rules and expectations. And we want to always provide unconditional love, even when you're disciplining, even when you're super mad about what's happening. It's okay to have those emotions. And it's okay to express those emotions too and try to do it in a way that's appropriate. It says here that your words should feel good to your child 80% of the time. And that can be a challenge because I can tell you, I remember being shocked about how mad I could be at a baby. Like I felt like it was the most mad I was ever at a human being before, and she's just a baby. So it can be really hard, but you want to, as much as you want, you can express your anger towards your child, let them know that you're feeling angry about something because they're going to read it on your behavior anyway. So you want your words and your behavior to match, otherwise it's confusing to your child. So it's okay to say, you know what, I'm really angry about what you just did there. I'm going to take a moment to calm down a bit, and then we're going to talk about it. And you can also say, you know, even when I'm angry, I love you just as much, though, just so you know, right? So, and you can show it to them. If you're feeling so angry that if you gave them a hug, you probably wouldn't mean it fully, I would wait until you can do it and mean it, because otherwise that can be confusing. If you're hugging them and saying you love them, but you're stiff and angry, they're going to read the stiff and angry part versus the words. So, but however you can, just let them know that they're loved, even when you're angry and even when you're having to discipline them. So toddlers. Toddlers usually misbehave because they can't express themselves, nor have they really learned how to control their emotions very well. They're starting to become more independent. They're trying to communicate to people, and it's a struggle. So they get angry, they have tantrums. It's a challenge. We can't reason with them very well yet at this age. So you can giving them choices is a really nice thing to do. Would you like to wear these socks or these socks? That would be what I had to do with my daughter because she really hated socks, but needed to wear them most of the time, like in the winter. So these ones or these ones versus wear them or not, or here you have to wear these ones. If you give them a choice, then it gives them a sense of control over what's happening for them. You can also do a timeout, and you know it should be really brief, and it's a way of giving them a moment, giving you a moment too, actually, to just calm down. They usually recommend 1 minute per year of age only, to a maximum of 5 minutes. It's really just a breather, just a breather. For preschool kids, so now they're learning how to navigate the world, but they still don't really know how to handle everything. So we want to be clear about our limits, set the limits, apply consequences. One of the big things that can happen with preschool kids is that you find that you have to ask them multiple times to do something, right? They're not always great at listening to you. And then you can get into this, I'm only asking you one more time, and keep going like that. So, it's really good to set that limit and then apply the consequences. So you might ask once, and if they don't do it, go ahead and ask them again, and then add that there's going to be a consequence if they don't do it. And then if you get to the third time, you just apply the consequence. And all the while, try to catch them being good. Because while you're applying any discipline or consequences, the most effective thing to do is to watch for that behavior that you want and make sure you get on that and reward that. Reward more of, basically. Now, the school age children, this is like prime time to lay the foundations for future behavior. So you take kind of a coaching approach here. They're starting to learn a lot about the world at this age. They're getting some skills, so we can really focus on the logical or natural consequences. You can press rewind, give them a chance to do things over again. Some people like to use graphs or charts here. Which I did this with my daughter. Of course, we had to have all these. She was feisty. She's still feisty. She remembers to this day having a smiley face chart. So it was really, we just hand drew it, and we drew smiley faces on, put it on the fridge. And anytime she did something that we wanted to see or that we had agreed would be good for her to do, we would just draw a smiley face on there. We wouldn't even make a big deal of it. We would just be, oh, look at that smiley face. I can't remember if we would scratch one off if she did something. We might have done that. I don't know about whether that works or not, but I think it did for her, to be honest. So we together decided what the reward would be if she got enough smiley faces. And I think I remember her wanting to watch Survivor. That was a big show at the time. And so to this day, she says, I remember that. And I remember thinking, tonight's Survivor, and I need a couple more smiley faces. I better not lose any. And I'm going to do some things to earn them. And it was very effective. She jokes about it now, that she feels bitter about it because we didn't do it with our son, who is 5 years younger. And my response to her was, he didn't need it. he was one of the easy ones. So you can do those things with them. Works really well. The tweens, this can be a particularly challenging time, I think. They're pretty feisty in the tween stage and a bit ornery. This is where they start to, for the most part, think they know better. They treat you like you're an idiot. I think I remember saying to my son once when he was 13 or something like that, why do kids your age always seem to hate their parents? So it can be a challenging time. They're starting to spread their wings and they want to go further. They're not fully ready to do a lot of that, but they're getting there. There are some strategies I learned when I worked at Children's Center that really stayed with me. I really, really like these approaches. So one of the things to keep in mind, at any stage really, but maybe particularly at the tween stage, is they a lot of times want to draw you into an argument. And it's important to think about the fact that parents and children have very different goals in that kind of a situation. So usually our goal is the outcome. So we want to win the argument. We want to get our way in this situation. For the child, a lot of times, their goal is not the outcome. Their goal is to draw you into the argument. So as soon as you get hooked into the argument, they've reached their goal. Now they don't know that's their goal. That's all on a subconscious level. So a strategy that can be really helpful here, because you want to do what you can to not get drawn into the argument. You want to maintain your authority, because as soon as you do that, you give up your authority in the situation, right? You're the top of the hierarchy. You need to be that. You can book an appointment to argue. This can cause them to escalate a little bit at first, so don't be alarmed by that. Anytime we implement some sort of discipline or consequence, if it's new to them, you can expect an escalation, because that's natural in behaviorism. If they've been reinforced for a behavior over a period of time and you stop reinforcing and do things differently, they're going to work extra hard to try to get you to do what you used to do. Don't be alarmed by that. Just stick to the new plan, and that will extinguish over time. So in booking an appointment to argue, as your child tries to draw you into the argument, you just say, you know what? We're going to get back together at 6 o'clock, and we're going to talk about that then. And likely they're going to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And the parent's task is to just calmly keep saying, you know what? We'll talk about that at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, we're definitely going to talk about that. Just keep saying that. Over time, they're going to catch on to this and not push it so hard. So then when 6 o'clock comes around, you absolutely come back, find them, and say, hey, it's 6 o'clock. We should talk about that now. So chances are people have calmed down a little bit. They might not even want to argue about that anymore, or they might be in a better emotional state to have that conversation, and likely you are too. Then have the conversation and really listen to them. If they make an argument for whatever their issue is that you agree with, genuinely agree with, go ahead and negotiate that. Because again, you've set the tone here. You're the one in charge of this. It's your decision, so you're allowed to change it. So go ahead and do that. If not, then you just stick to your original decision, and you might have to then book another appointment to argue. But over time, this approach can be really helpful. You can use the when then. So if they want something, but they have to complete a chore or something, you can say, when that's done, then you can have this. Again, clear expectations are really helpful. There's also an approach called the university. So anything you can do to implement a consequence while remaining calm is really good. So this university approach, if you have a child who is not doing some tasks that you expect of them to do, again, I did this with my son, and it had to do with his hockey bag. So after hockey, the expectation was that he would unpack his hockey bag and put his equipment out to dry. And of course I'll do it later, I'll do it later. So what you do then is you book a time to practice this behavior. Now the key is to book a time that's convenient for you, but inconvenient for them. So again, give the impression that my kids watched a lot of TV. They did. It was during a TV show that he wanted to watch. That's when we practiced the unpacking of the hockey bag. So we did it all the way through. We'd bring the packed hockey bag into the car, carry it into the house, unpack it, pack it back up, bring it out, and repeat it. They have to practice it. They're obviously not very good at that behavior, so the idea is that you're going to have to practice it. And they're doing it when they really want to be doing something else. It got to the point where I think we only had to do it a couple of times. And all I had to do was say, oh, are you going to have to practice that behavior again? And he didn't want to do it. Teens. I like this picture of the teen because she's got the typical face of a teen just looking cranky. So there's a lot of hormones there. There's that drive for independence. With the teen, I mean, they're really starting to get some good skills. Usually, I think their skills are more evident to people who are not their parents because they tend to be a little bit nicer to other people. Um, but they've got some good ability now. You want to pick your battles. That's a really important part of this stage. Um, Pick the things that are really important. Maybe a messy room is something you can, I mean, that's going to be different for everybody. For some people, that's a battle they want to fight. For others, they can let that one go and, worry about some of the other things. Uh, Trying to not take it personally is really important because, they can be pretty mean at times. And I think I would argue that that also is the teens, and even in the school age, it can start. So trying to not take it personally is good. Now, that doesn't mean you should just take it, right? Just because you're the parent doesn't mean that you deserve to be treated disrespectfully or badly. So you would want to have some consequences for that, set some limits around that. Just realize that it has a lot to do with the stage versus you as a person. Now, in the pandemic, I find myself feeling so thankful that my children are grown up during this pandemic. For those of you who have younger children, I can't even imagine how stressful this time is. So much to has changed. You have so many more responsibilities, so much more to juggle, and dealing with the difficulties that your children might be going through this time. I can't even imagine. So you'd want to do all of the other things that I've been talking about already in terms of discipline and reinforcement and all of that. But you might have to attend to a few things in particular. The boundaries is going to be something I'd imagine. Like, you're spending a lot more time around each other during this pandemic. You're going to want some boundaries in terms of space, especially if you're working from home. You're going to need a space that's dedicated to that. And in terms of, taking on other people's problems, right? So you want to have good boundaries around that. There's a lot of pressure and expectation right now. Establishing a routine can be really helpful. Routines can be pretty comforting for people. Like, when kids know what to expect, uh, that can really be helpful. It can make things run a little bit more smoothly. They know that this is breakfast time and then this is reading time or whatever it might be. I can't imagine how parents are having to deal with the schooling stuff right now, honestly. Relaxing the screen time might be helpful. I know that, our kids spending a lot of time on the screens can concern parents quite a bit, and that's understandable. But at the same time, there's little for people, particularly kids. I think it will make your life easier to relax the screen time a little bit. I think you can be gentle with yourself around that. Um, Definitely communicate. If you're working, communicate with your supervisors and your coworkers. And I think this is for a number of reasons. One, to be in contact with some adults is good. You want to maintain that contact, not feel so isolated, but also to keep them aware of what you're dealing with and maybe what your needs are or any support you might need. Share responsibilities as much as you can with the people in your life. You want to get some breaks if you can. That's important. And I've said this a number of times throughout this presentation. Be gentle with yourself. Ultimately, I think people just generally could benefit from being gentle with themselves all over the place, but especially with parenting. It is a real challenge, and I think we can be pretty hard on ourselves as parents, maybe mothers in particular. I don't know if I'm right about that. Maybe that's just because I was a mother, am a mother, I guess still. um, But, we often feel like we're screwing up and, doing things wrong. And we will focus on that stuff. And I think it's really important to remind yourself that you're doing the best that you can. And I think that's particularly important right now during the pandemic. Uh, you're doing the best that you can. And kids are pretty resilient, also, by the way. I wanted to talk a little bit about parenting adult children too. That can have its own set of challenges. It can be, and that's the stage where I am right now. My daughter's 24 and my son is 19. It's a bit of a difficult shift sometimes because, I mean, we're lucky that the kids start to individuate. If things are going according to plan, they slowly start to pull away from us and engage more with their friends and become more independent. So it can be a bit of a gradual process, which helps. If there are uh, challenges with the kids, like mental health, significant mental health issues, or physical health issues, it can be a little bit, that can create a little bit more dependence on the parent. And then that can make the individuation process more difficult because you're going to have more concerns about your child, right? That would be natural. So it's a little bit more difficult to let them go out and navigate the world when they have some real significant difficulties. So that can complicate that process a little bit. And people might need help with it at that stage. But I think it's kind of a challenge, even at the best of times, to let these kids go. We've been there for them their whole lives, and then all of a sudden, they're not needing us in the same way anymore. So it can be really hard to make that shift. But really, what we're doing is we're shifting more into a friendship kind of relationship. It's not the same. So in this list, I say to set healthy boundaries. We're not going to talk to our kids exactly the same way we would talk to our friends or other adults in our lives. We might not share with them all of our relationship difficulties and that. So the boundaries are going to be a little bit different, but we can, in our interactions, we're interacting on a more equal level now. That can sometimes be where the challenge is, especially if they're living at home. We might want to still sort of be the boss of them. And navigating that can be a challenge. So we want to recognize and respect their differences. We've done all we can at this point now. We've raised them. We've tried to teach them everything we can so that they can be successful adults in the world. And now we need to, and I think it's our job more than anything. It's a task for us. We now have to shift into being individual people, and they're going to make their own decisions and their own mistakes. That's a challenge. And hopefully we've helped them to develop all the things they need to do that. And we can kind of enjoy them in a different way now, just by spending time together, maybe doing things that we like, we both like, hanging out together. There's going to be significant others. Trying to make room for them is helpful as well. And again, we're going to be more like a consultant, not a CEO. It's really hard to stop asking the questions like, did you send in your application for school? Did you pay your rent yet this month? That kind of stuff, right? We're used to like prompting them and reminding them to do things. And at this stage now, it's up to them. And they may not do that, but wow, that's super important for them to learn from their mistakes. So their mistakes are going to be helpful to them as well. So we're going to want to hold back on that. When my daughter moved away to university, I really had to hold myself back from lamenting about that constantly because I recognized that was my need. I wanted her to be closer because it was making me feel anxious or sad as a parent. And really, her job is to go explore the world and live her life. So I had to consciously stop myself. I did a little bit of it. I'm not going to lie, but it was my task to help her do that, individuate, and become an independent adult. So I had to let that happen. So again, I have to really drive this home. Please be gentle with yourself. And I really like this quote by Carl Jung. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived lives of its parents. It really is important to make sure that you are living a life that's meaningful to you in ways beyond just being a parent, in whatever way that means for you. So you want to make sure that your relationship is important to you, and that you're nurturing that and giving that time, whatever relationships you have in your life. If you're working, that's important. Maybe you want to go to school. Be sure to not sacrifice too much for the sake of your parenting. That could end up leading to some resentment, which will then affect the children. And then also what can happen is, because we didn't go and follow our desires or our dreams, sometimes parents can then put that on their children, right? Well, then I'm going to help you do that, but that might not be their dream. So it's really important to honor what you need as an individual and try to make that important part of your life as well. So thank you for listening to me talk about this. I have just a few resources. Some of these resources I use to develop the slides. And this book here, Raising Your Spirited Child, is a really excellent resource. There's lots of really good resources out there, but I think this is the book that had the booking the appointment to argue strategy in it, and also the university strategy. So it's a really helpful book. We are the top of the hierarchy as parents. The hierarchy does mean disciplining and consequences, but also remember that as the top of the hierarchy, you're also the provider of good things. So your ability to do nice things for them, like maybe it's bringing them to dance class or whatever it might be that they love to do, hockey or anything like that, you get to do that. So even if they're behaving badly, you get to decide that they can still potentially go to dance class because you know that's really important for them and the development of their sense of self, right? You can decide what the consequence is and what it's not, right? So you're the provider of good things. So these are some really helpful resources. And if you're wondering about anything else, please feel free to email me or contact Caitlin, and we could see what else is out there for you. But thank you. So if there are any questions, you can feel free to even turn on your camera and your mic and ask it directly, or you can type it in. And I think Caitlin will do a really good job of watching out for them, because that's not my forte.
I'm just going to give it a second.
Sure.
Typing. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop in right now. Kristine, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. I'm now thinking about how I was as a child, and I think I may have given my parents a run for their money.
That's okay. That was your job.
All right, so I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we'll wrap up. questions, I will put my email address in the chat box once again, and you can copy it down and send me any questions, and I can redirect them to Kristine for you. Oh, there's a question. Love it. So question is, I am running into issues with my 7-year-old son not wanting to wear certain socks or go to school. Any strategies?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can completely relate to the clothes issue. That was completely my daughter's thing. In fact, I remember I was dead set on her wearing certain clothes. I wanted her to wear jeans. I don't know why I wanted her to wear jeans. She always picked these weird mixes of clothes. You know, I'm fighting those battles a lot of the time. I was sat in a dressing room for about an hour once, having her try on jeans until she could find a pair that she could tolerate. I don't know why I did that. I wish if I think back to that time, I wish I had not fought that battle. I mean, socks are something you really need. There might be times where you can get away with no socks, I guess, if they have really warm boots or it's mild enough. I don't know. You'd have to decide what your limits are around that. But I think you could see about helping them pick out some socks, try out some socks that they feel are okay for them. The choice thing is helpful there. Decide if you can drop that battle or not. That's your decision. The school thing is difficult. Do you know what the issue is with going to school? Why your 7-year-old doesn't want to? Nothing. Yeah, I think that would be really. Oh, here. Yeah, the changes. Yeah, I wonder if in this case, that's really stressful to parents, the school thing. Um, Here I wonder if setting up a bit of a reward system might be helpful in terms of, you know, even just the steps of getting to school, earning some sort of reward for doing that, any efforts to get there. I would focus on rewarding that behavior. It can be a challenge. Um, the other thing, the other thing is to have that expectation. So I think you want to have that balance of this is expected and let's figure out together how to make this happen, including what the rewards might be when your child is successful in doing that. Kind of working on it together.
Are there any other questions out there? So as mentioned, I have popped my email into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. If you do have any questions that arise after this presentation tonight, feel free to reach out and I can forward everything on to Kristine. Otherwise, hearing nothing else, thank you again, Kristine, for joining us tonight. And I look forward to more presentations from you if that's what the future holds. Gotta love that they're probably going to be virtual.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy talking about these topics, and I really appreciate that people are interested and willing to listen.
All right, everyone. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks very much.